Good evening, everyone, and welcome to reading number 398 of the It's About Time Writers Reading Series. I believe I announced recently that we have said that we're starting our 34th year, having completed 33. And I also have some exciting ideas that I'd love to hear back from you about mixing it up a little bit this year. We may go partially hybrid, some in-person appearances, and also maybe some themed readings. So I'll be looking forward to getting your input. But I'm so happy to have a long-standing poetry group. Our poetry group tonight, I asked them if they had a name, and they said their name is Poetry Group. So I am very happy to have with us here tonight several members. Unfortunately, not all, so they can, speak to who's missing. But our first reader tonight will be Katie Tynan. Katie has been writing poetry since she was 8 years old, and her first poem was about the moon, and she's recently come full circle by taking a Hugo House class, Writing to the Moon and Back with Sierra Nelson. She's hoping that it gets her back on the track, writing with these wonderful fellow poets. I'm so glad that's another mention of Sierra Nelson. Will definitely, everybody has to get to the Ballard Library and see the work that Sierra and Ann Teplick have done. But for now, Katie Tynan.
Hello, thank you, Peggy. This first poem is self-explanatory, so I'll just start with it. Hike at Willow Lake, Arizona. Length, 3.3 miles. Rating, easy to moderate, sturdy boots with good traction required. Elevation, 5,000 feet. Dogs, must be on leash, pack out poo. Fee, $2 daily parking. We set out at the dog park, hike a flat path. Our dog, tail like a flag, ropes out ahead. Her backside, its own parade. She conducts us to the trailhead, marked by a copse of cottonwood, smooth white bark, broad foliage, greening up for spring. I stop to retie my boot. The necklace you gave me in Sedona falls forward, a rough 3-penny nail forged in the shape of infinity, embellished with garnet and copper beads. Garnet is a sign of devotion. Did you know? The dog, devoted, looks back, makes sure of us as the trail gains ground in rugged turns and bends. A glimpse of red and black as a woodpecker startles up, disappears into a density of scrub oak, which soon gives way to granite dells, a labyrinth of wind-polished slick rock. Gray-green dust in our noses and on our tongues. The trail traced by small white dots, spray-painted directional ellipses that keep us from scrambling blind. What if we ignore them? What if we veer off course, swing a pickaxe eager to be lethal, hack footholds straight up to the airy overlook, the unobstructed view, the vista? I want a vista. I want a destination free from doubt. We heed the dots, follow their lead. When I stumble, you steady me. Yesterday's spat forgotten. After 26 years, it's hard to keep track. If love is as ordinary as a dog's collar, circling our days, could we trek a strenuous journey, unhitched from our ambition? Assured of a summit, I can tell you now, the lake below glints like topaz, symbol of fidelity and friendship. With a sky as blue as tomorrow, who cares if we can't see the end? This next poem is titled Apotheosis. And if you were reading that on a piece of paper, you could Google what apotheosis is, but since you can't do that, I'm just going to say what the definition is. So this is kind of an epigraph, but not really an epigraph about the term. Okay. Apotheosis, the highest level of power or importance, exaltation to divine rank or stature, deification. So, apotheosis. You already know, have always known, the moment a leaf spins across the sky in a wind that won't hold you. A dog's bark is evidence of its advance. As if there were a book that leans into the believer's eyes, one bite tells the story. Life altered by gunning it through the intersection in order to make the light. If dog is your co-pilot, no beetle-browed deity tucked up behind cumulative clouds clots the available air, leaving you to bow down to bad luck. What you devise, godded by a rending of flesh, elevates your calamities. You maintain your belief, however, in the power of calamity. So I can't read and look up at the same time, guys. I'm hoping I'm being listened to. Okay, and then finally, doubt. And this does have a real live epigraph. There are no facts, only interpretations. Nietzsche. Dying lives, wait a minute, start over. Dying leaves burned bright are the God's honest truth of October. Hours drift, clouds pile up. The debatable sun sneaks through. I let loose with hesitant backswings as our guide maneuvers the oars through bumps and runs, catechizing where in the green current to send our spinners. My erratic, wind-borne casts lack faith, hover at the edge of a turbulent pool, skitter and pull, until a nudge of the fly rod signals a strike. The incandescent trout, fooled by the tide caddisfly nymph, the hook, an abrupt reality. Call it a day, call it a week, call it a thirst for grace, wanting to believe the river rushes to be at this juncture. The copper leaves, primed to fall, float downstream. In Nietzsche's hesitant universe, I entangle, like an exegesis, the tippet from the fly line. Certitude, perched like a heron, trusts beginner's luck, like a waterfowl who doesn't hesitate to dance along dark eddies, knowing dusk is destined to void its reflection. And
Thank you so much, Katie. Okay, our next reader is Marcia Barton. Marcia. Marcia began writing poems in middle age because she lost a bet with her husband. Since that time, writing poems and reading other people's have been life-saving on many occasions, particularly during COVID-19. Welcome.
The title of this poem will become clear presently. You'll recognize what it is. It was just a different pair of words that popped up on my screen. Confirm humanity. No, I'm not a robot. At least I don't believe I am. But then how would I know if I were? Why would you take my word for it? Sometimes I can't see whether there are bicycles or even stoplights when the photos are so small. And anyway, why depend on what I can see? An alien would have fine magnification, wouldn't he? Or they? Or she? Besides, there's that tiny blind spot the laser made in my right eye when my glance flicked over at the wrong second. So who knows what it is I'm not seeing? My blind friend has always seemed very humane to me. And I forgot to mention that I'm a woman, classified female at birth, and it's always seemed to fit. Yet, as I recall, someone asked the learned philosophers about women, could they conceivably be human? I've never heard what the philosophers said, if they answered at all. Was the question ever answered? I don't know. Thank you for the waves. This is Boys in the Kitchen. I recently had a moment of reunion with a group of men in their 60s who, when they were 14 and 15 years old, used to haunt my kitchen. They were my son's classmates at school up the street, and they arrived every afternoon right on time in exactly the boyish way you would expect if you know boys. Boys in the kitchen. Down the hill you'd come, all big shoes, loud boy voices cracking in excitement. We never locked the door, so you all piled in, shedding monster backpacks, hard guitar cases, and crowded around the cookie jar, scattering crumbs, needing help with physics or this week's dumb English assignment. I couldn't help remembering how recently you'd been sweet little kids, excited about dinosaurs or summer camp, learning to canoe and climb to the highest board above the pool, scared and eager, and then exhilarated, discovering what you'd learned, paddling to poolside and climbing the ladder again and again, and then again. The next stage was harder and slower to reward the rugged business of changing, growing into a body constantly expanding its contours, full of feelings, ready to spring up and make you and shake you hard long before you could know what to call them. You needed to learn to live in bodies as unreliable as the timbre of your voices, the length of your feet. No wonder music measured out your days, singing of stairways to heaven. And finally, this poem was written because I downsized from my downsized house and came to live at the Thornton Creek Aljoya retirement residence. And one very emotionally affecting day was the day the piano went away, which I expected to take all morning and involve a great deal of ceremony and perhaps some breathless moments and suspense. It did not. Pas de deux with large object. Two small men descend from their truck, bringing a dolly, a pile of blue quilts, a wooden pyramid with pliers and screwdrivers tucked inside, a T-shaped prop, and a set of webbing belts. They set to work padding and strapping the body, then begin tilting, balancing with their prop and pyramid, shifting that third of a ton of belly full of spruce and walnut and steel, pegs and wires and hammers and dampers to unscrew pedal, lyre, and legs. I am holding my breath, but the silent workmen, steady as orbiting planets, test and tighten the belts, maneuver the body to the vertical, test that the load is snug on its dolly, legs and pedals tucked away, and the chickering rolls out the door, down the ramp, along the front walk to the street. A moment for alignment, then up the two-part ramp, a pause midway, and another good push. Stow the ramp, close the tailgate, climb aboard, wave goodbye, drive away. 23 minutes after parking the truck. Thank you. To you.
I noticed the piano behind Katie. Well, I can see it there now, and upright. But likewise, I was parting with the piano, and I pictured it to do the way it came in, and instead, when I got home, they'd come early, and all that was left was an empty space.
Oh dear, that's even worse.
I know. Thank you.
At least that mine went to live with my second eldest granddaughter.
Well, actually, there is a story behind where my piano went. It went to somebody that had a newborn and her mother wanted to learn. And so there was the idea that maybe there would be a piano for 3 hands. Who knows? Anyway, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Let's see. I think what we'll do is we'll go to Carol Levin, and then we will have an open mic from Jesse Minkert. So Jesse, you'll be on kind of what's it called? Like next at bat after Carol. So Carol, you want to say hello? I will read you. Okay. So Carol has been one of the #1 supporters for as long as I have been attending It's About Time, and it's actually also how we met. So some of her adventures include 20 years on stage as a supernumerary, in Seattle Opera, that's a silent actor, as a founding member and literary manager of the former art theater Puget Sound. Along with 2 Russians, she translated Chekhov's 4 major plays and a dictionary of Stanislavski terms for theater artists. She recently retired as editorial assistant Crab Creek Review, which she's been doing since 2007. And she's also retired from teaching the Breathing Lab, which integrated Alexander technique. She's been fortunate enough to have had 5 books chosen and published by wonderful presses. Welcome, Carol.
Thank you, Peggy. In 2008, there was a contest for poets who wrote, poems that were only fit on postcards. And it was a contest, and I happened to win, which definitely surprised me. The press that it was called, published, it was called, where is it? I wrote it. Oh, Late Blooms Postcard Series. And the press that published it was Concrete Wolf, which is basically a chapbook press. And this is the poem I wrote. And we laughed about heaven. When we arrived in heaven, 10 dogs, counting forward from our first in childhood, would be wagging greetings. We worried former wives and ex-husbands also would be in wait, but laughed at ourselves, remembering in heaven only the preferred will be restored. Laughed over the thought that we would be thought, relieved of the weight of our bodies. We laughed, gasping for breath until our sides hurt, and then we laughed because we were ourselves laughing together around the dining room table on earth, where we can still feel pain. And the next poem I'm going to read is from my book, Confident Music Would Fly Us to Paradise. And it's the very last poem in the book. The title is Supernumerary. The best thing about being a super is that the voice is banished. Eye on the conductor, alert to the orchestra, the super's voiceless character on stage exists in make-believe. At the climax ovation, bravos are received for the stars' sublime singing, continuing to glow even after stars depart, and I emerge from the back corner and bow. I don't leave. I won't leave. I stay on stage, triumphant, subsumed by warm swells of vibrations, molecules still spilling along the opera house walls, bouncing against balconies and chandeliers, flying to the stage from the audience's empty red seats. Echoes of adulation gush over me after they all retire: stage manager, conductor, musicians, chorus, principals, electricians, prop crew, makeup and costumers. After stagehands sweep up and stow the full moon in the flies, the lights flick out, door locks click, celestially lit in hurdy-gurdy enchantment. I grow taller, standing, feet apart on the proscenium, arms raised sky high, seeing everything, just me. Here I stand, still. And one more. And this is from my book, An Undercurrent of Jitters. And the title is Pop the Question Poppycock. Is considering marriage so slight a thought you pop the question? Sounds so unconsidered. Surprising as a salted corn kernel burst into bloom, popped into a mouth. Someone hoping yeses in colors of pop art popped it on one knee. Popped, will you marry me? Just popped out and popped the bubble, popped it in an email, popped it in a song, on an airplane banner, or on a bouquet of white beaded iris, popped it on the beach, popped it on the bed, even though pooped, it popped. What do you hear? Pop, pop, pop. Silly, eh? Soda pop suggests not quite popping it. The fathers, our pops, pop when dads wed. Bulging eyes often described as popping, and baseball bats hit a short high fly. Popsicle, then pop goes the weasel, the old country dance. Pop the question is always only one question, in case you were asking. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. Thanks for helping me like sort out the first reading of 2023. Carol leapt to help me out when I had been trying to juggle too many balls at the end of the last year. Now, Jesse Minkert, go ahead and unmute for your open mic. I think he's still here. Where'd Jesse go? You know, I think maybe we lost him. That explains a lot. Well, sorry about that. I haven't seen Jesse since we were in person, and he would always surprise us with whatever form he was trying out at a different time. And he had asked to do the open mic, but we'll get him back, I'm sure. If not tonight, then another time. So we will now go to Janet Sekijima. No, I didn't say that right. You better say your name for me. Janet.
Sure, it's Janet Sekijima.
Sekijima.
Right, and you wouldn't be the first person to mispronounce it.
Well, I know.
I mean,
really-
I found an old elementary school picture with my last name misspelled, so
So maybe
had a lot of
misspelled-
letters.
maybe they misspelled it, to the point where they were able to pronounce it better. But anyway, Janet is a rare third generation Seattle native, and she is grateful to her mom for reading the Big Golden Book of Poetry, 85 childhood favorites to her when she was a child. She's been enjoying reading and writing poetry ever since. I know I've been enjoying her writing since I first met her back in 1997. So it's
Oh my gosh, has it been that long?
It has.
Ay, ay, ay.
Whitman School.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
With Pesha, right?
With Pesha. Yeah. So welcome. I can't wait to hear what you're working on now.
Thank you, Peggy. I wanted to show a picture. Can you see this? This is the original golden book of poetry that my mom used to read to us out of, and I really treasure it. It's very well loved and well worn, and I wanted to bring it to show it to you. So my first poem is in honor of my mom, who died already, gosh, in 2014. And when she passed away, she had Alzheimer's, and she couldn't talk for the last 2 years of her life. So we communicated in those last 2 years with mostly just non-verbal kinds of signs and gestures. So that's what this piece is about. It's called Conversing on a Spring Day. Mama pats her lap, pat, 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 pat. I am young, tucked once more against her heart, a red bird circling, whoosh, 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 whoosh. Music of spring, she points out the window, finger tapping, tap, tap, tapping. A cherry erupts into full song, each blossom's fur bee-brushed tingled, zzz, zzz. And beyond the poplars, a woodpecker drums, tat, 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 tat. His sticky tongue unfurls, snaps back from shadowy crevices, flick, flick, flick. Each burst of his pecking brings a nod. Our eyes meet, wink, wink. I lean to kiss her cheek, soft and petal fragrant. Her ear rings, a metallic chirp, chirping. I love you, Mama, love you. Mama nods silently, eyes on lap. Pat, 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 pat. The next piece is also kind of related to my mom. It's called Dream of a Wedding Gown. The wedding gown my mother wore lies drowsing in the stale air of a black lacquered trunk. Our family's number scrawled on its side, worn leather carrying straps on either end. The dress's satin-covered buttons trace the curve of her back. A small miracle of this dress is that it still breathes inside its shape. A slight fragrance of gardenia riffs off its neckline. The beat of her heels kicking back the skirt, bright puffs of satin, an answering hush of its rustling sheen. My mother's pale face, crimson lips quivering at my father's smile, his shock of gleaming black hair, that soft light in his eyes. Every object lives a life of its own, demands attention, care, at least asks to be aired out between the years as they pass. Should we keep Mom's old dress? My sister asked. No, best to send it downstream to another lucky someone, as our grandmother's silk kimono came to us, tucked inside a lidded box enfolded with yellow tissue. We too inherit our mother's family crest, a stylized ship, its square sail dyed on the back collar. It drifts around somewhere lost at sea, perhaps moored on the top shelf of my sister's in-law closet. Perhaps having washed onto the seductive but unreliable shore of memory, or perhaps sliding under the waves with a sigh. And then, let's see, okay, I'll read this more recent one. It's called Pentimento. And pentimento, from the Italian pentirisi, means to repent. And in art, the reappearance in an oil painting of original elements of drawing or painting that the artist tried to obliterate by overpainting. Pentimento. Rembrandt painted Flora circa 1656, a portrait of a woman, his wife perhaps, her auburn hair upswept with a narrow woven headband, wisps of ringlets escaping from the nape of her delicately shadowed neck, her brown eyes downcast. Her pearl necklace and earrings reflect the gauzy ivory of her round-necked blouse with puffy sleeves that gather, flare, and regather in loose ruffles at her wrists. Flora wears a wide-brimmed hat bedecked with a tasteful arrangement of leaves dotted with coral-tinged blossoms. Her hat, while lovely in itself, is renowned because just to the left of that hat brim, you can clearly see the shadow of the original hat brim, which was later, on second thought, painted over. But today, its image has reappeared, rising to the surface of the painting, and once again visible in a haunting shadow, a sepia, umber, a tinge of blue. As if the painting itself was remembering, no, if you look again, it was really more true like this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I love the idea of the wedding dress downstream. And so many others. And in part because you wrote about your mother, I'm having a memory of an exercise. And since this is a poetry group we're talking to, it's appropriate to discuss exercises. Pesha had us do something in that Whitman classroom, Pesha Gertler, where we were saying something and having to walk around and say it to each person. And I remember crossing you several times, and there was something that your grandmother used to say to you that you would say whenever we met. You know, you'll have to think about it. It's like, it was very interesting. It's the kind of thing that it's a bizarre memory now of like walking around with each of us, like saying something that was from someone very dear to us, but a phrase that they would always say. So I'll let you know when it comes back up to the surface. Maybe it's that pentimento, it'll rise. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you so much. It's a delight to hear all of your work. Okay, next up, Francine. Say
Hi.
hello. Hi. Okay.
Hello, Peggy.
Hello, Francine. Okay, Francine may not be third generation Seattle native, but she is hardcore Seattle born and bred. And she's earned her living as a waitress, motel maid, pineapple factory worker, laundress, secretary, portrait photographer, ESL teacher in Africa, librarian, and library director. Her poems appear in numerous journals, as well as her recent chapbook, Waiting for Someone to Find Me. we find Francine. Welcome.
Thank you, Peggy. The first poem is about the Anza Borrego Desert, which is a state park in California. So, Anza Borrego Desert. Dawn slips across the desert, staining its ring of mountains lavender. Pinon, Valecito, Santa Rosa, San Isidro. But in the east, the Borrego Mountains taper off. Cholla cacti outlined in white light dot the desert floor. Golden candelabras flower on stalks of agave. Morning doves squabble in mesquite trees. A lizard peeks from its granite sanctuary. Once birds, wingspan 17 feet, soared above the largest mammoth, Mammuthus imperator. They left only bones and footprints in the mud. What has gone from your life? What spirits stay near you? Welcome them to the stone bench, to the fire. After rain, the creosote bush, the ancient's medicine chest, scents the air. A hawk hunts in silence at sunset. Once, this was Kauai land. Once, the aquifer sang deep and full. Above the eastern uplift of Fonts Point, above the clod, eroded Carrizo Badlands, the singular eye of the moon rises. The next poem is called Road Rage. Are you going for a quick fix? The cheap trick? When the upholstery splits on the seat, the armrest cracks, your glasses break, do you just duct tape them? Are you high maintenance, high risk, higher than a kite? Is that mold in your refrigerator growing mushrooms? Is your garden so weedy the iris refused to bloom? Is your underwear frayed, fragrant? Are you driving on empty, quaffing adrenaline like shots of whiskey, careening around corners like a pinball addict? Don't speed through that red light. Don't shoot the driver who cuts in front of you, slowing you down. Stop. Just stop. Throw the Subaru into park. Otherwise, you'll not catch a glimpse of the little boy on the sidewalk, walking backwards just as fast as he can, and the nun in her black habit, barreling down the zip line, shrieking with glee. Or the young girl riding the leaping stag, stroking its sleek flanks, calling it by name. All right, and the last one is called Leaving Africa. Just so you understand, the man said, as I praised his wife for her industry, her artistry. My wife does not own the fields she buys, nor the house she keeps, nor the wages she earns, nor the clothes she sews, nor the children she bears. If I divorce her, which I could do easily enough, she takes nothing. Not her fields, not her house, not her wages, not her clothes, not her children, nothing but her own breath. You may notice my wife is careful to honor me in all things, which is a good thing in a woman. Thank you.
She leaves us with that. I'd love to open it up in a few minutes for the people who are attending tonight to have a chance to ask some questions about how this poetry group works. For right now, I want to share with you something that one of our audience members tonight, Judy Sloniker, sent to me, or what she found out. This is back when It's About Time used to have a newsletter. They actually did mailings. And this one is from March 11th, 1999. And it includes poems by Madeline DeFries, Laura Snyder, Ruby Singer, and Linda Martinson. Oh, I see Ruth Brinton has arrived. We're going to have another reader from the poetry group. While she gets set in, let me read you this is Madeline's work that was part of this newsletter back then. It's called From the Light Station on a Tillamook Rock. On my knees before the fire, the wood too green, I feed New Yorker pages to the coals and watch that elegant four-color blaze, Wedgwood and Tanqueray fire, Christian Dior, smoke of Royal Copenhagen, Glenlivet fire, and Eau Sauvage. Why is it the news glows with such passion as the margins darken, the words dissolve, and ashes creep along the edge? That is The Light Station on Tillamook Rock by Madeline DeFries. Ruth, you are in time to read. Okay, let me introduce you and then you can read for us. Ruth began writing in, as she says, the most cliched of circumstances, a broken romance. She studied with Nelson Bentley at the UW and worked with him on the editorial board of the Seattle Review. She taught writing at North Seattle Community College and Skagit Valley College before retiring to tend her garden on Whidbey Island. It always seems to work out that there's kind of a synchronicity, because I've just been, sharing this, as many of you know, this series is devoted and dedicated, to the memory of Anna Helfgott and to the memory of Nelson Bentley, the quintessential teacher, obviously, who affected so many of you. And also we've been discussing Pesha Gertler, who many of us met through North Seattle Community College, as it was called then. So what a nice confluence tonight. Welcome, Ruth.
Thank you. Many people know Lake LaBarge from the Robert Service poem, The Cremation of Sam McGee. Whenever I mention it, it usually gets a snicker, because you know what Robert Service's poems were like. They just kind of bounded along, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Anyway, this instead is about my experience of Lake LaBarge. Yukon night. Snow falls as night fills Lake LaBarge. Hills holding the lake lose all detail, loom as shadows. Headlamp and fur-trimmed hood shape light into an illusion of tunnel over the trail. But beyond my lead dogs, the trail's existence is faith. Faith the dogs will always find it, even as snow blurs the ruts. Faith it will lead us home. Miles stretch into cold hours, marked not by the known shapes of Grizzly Mountain and the dome-shaped rock, hidden in low clouds and darkness, but by the swish of sled runners, faint crunch of paws against snow. And now for a completely different change of scene. Rudy's tattoos. Rudy says, what do you want? What works itself, worms itself into your dreams? Nights when the moon is half and a comet crosses the sky, dances reels through stars. Rudy asks, you want an iris, pansy, dragon, Chinese, Moorish, Celtic, French? You want a rattlesnake, cobra, candelabrum, wedding cake, bride and groom on the third tier, naked in a field of sugared violets. You want the lullaby your mother crooned? You want the touch of your first lover's hand on your back, slow dance to the bedroom, rumba played at 16 RPM. You want silk sea splashing your ankles, sand between your toes, tugged out by waves, tipping balance. Rudy looks into your eyes, your hands, the creases of your wrists, and Rudy says, you want circles, merry-go-rounds, cherry pies, a cat chasing her tail. Whatever you want, Rudy says, whatever you want. Thank you.
While you were, before you were able to join us, the others all read 3. So in case you've got a third one you'd like to grab, you are welcome to do so. Put you on the spot.
Okay, we'll go back to the dogs. If dogs wrote poems, a canine poetica. 1. The lines would lope across the page, pause to sniff each comma, pounce on images of rats skittering across the yard, stop, reverse, direction, rabbit, leaping for cover in a grove of words clumped like sword ferns, salal, wild huckleberry under alder, and the lines would settle at stanza's end, stretch and sigh to let the heart beat slow. 2. Rhymes would rise from the page in sense. No A-B pattern, but the random circuits of memory, raccoon paired with possum, raw meat on the kitchen counter mated with roadkill, coyote slant rhymed with fox, wet sheep with beehives, vowel rhyme of rainstorm with cucumber slice dropped on the floor, consonant rhyme of old fish bones with snail shell, echoes of daisy in the outer layer of composting hay, every kind of pee and feces in a carnival of alliteration. And so the poem grows as long as a life, one sniff at a time. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm so glad you're able to join. Like I said, it really is kind of like a reunion here. So for the people who are all here, if you have any, questions, I welcome you to start your own poetry group. How do they do it? When do they meet? Ask the poets. Feel free.
I have a question for Carol.
Whoops. Yes, Karen.
Oh, okay, so in your poem about the supernumerary,
Yes.
I would love for you to talk about the feeling that you portray in that poem, and it has something to do with the shadow cast.
I'm not sure exactly what you're asking, but I can respond for what I heard you say that it makes me think about, and that's standing on the stage in front of 3,000 people. But we are cast as characters, so we have that life that we're in, whatever we're cast to do. And since it's an opera, we have to really pay attention to our cues, which are only in music. And then we do have assistant people who stand behind the stage and tell us to go. But standing on the stage, especially at the end, where we're all standing and taking bows at the same time, usually, and then we get to see the audience. And I don't know if I have a way to describe that, but anybody, I guess, can imagine how they might feel standing on the stage with 3,000 people, and they most often did it in a standing ovation, that they would be clapping, and much to my distress, whistling, and because our operas at Seattle Opera were really, probably still are, really, really, really good most of the time. And so it's an amazing sensation. But you can each, play around with that in your mind and see how it stands, how it stands there.
Well, the reason that I wanted you to talk about that is because, I mean, you are a poet where words, and because you're a poet, words mean a lot. And so in that role, you aren't allowed any words at all, but you're given the audience anyhow. You get the audience, but you aren't allowed to give them words.
Isn't it perfect?
What always strikes me from that poem is the voice is banished, and what an interesting thing for a poet to say. I think we have a question from Catherine Gilmore. Hands up.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hello, everyone.
We started to be able to hear you. I hope we'll be able to. If you want, you could put the question in the chat if that would work better.
So happy to be here. I found out about your group from the Ballard Library yesterday. I went in, a librarian told me about it and encouraged me to come tonight. So I have two questions. The first is generally for the group, like, how did you all start? How have you been able to keep this going for so long? And yeah, just, what has this group done and meant for you? The second part is, I want to know about the bet you made with your husband. How did you lose it? And how did it make you start writing poetry?
My husband, who was a scientist, wrote all the time, very much like his grandfather, who had a small newspaper in the little BC town of, well, not so little anymore, the now Vancouver suburb, I guess, of Haney. And I think that Gene was there, even though he was a physicist first, last, and foremost, but he wrote all the time and always had a kind of informal record of, you could have called it an almanac, but it would be written on the back of torn open envelopes and the backs of junk mail that turned up printed only on one side, and it would be stuffed into a large envelope that had brought something nobody wanted, to the house. In other words, it was just scraps of paper. And he did not expect me to lose that bet. He expected to win it. And so he had something he wanted to write, I think. But I lost the bet, and you have to honor your bets, especially with your near and dear. So I found myself writing about the people we were visiting at that time. They were parents of a friend and the sadness just stung your eyes all the time. And when we finally left to continue our trip, we drove away, both of us sniveling and wiping our eyes. And I had written about each of the parents, and about, I think I'd written one more thing that was in the form of a poem. I mean, I read poetry and taught poetry in literature classes, but I had and I wrote other stuff, but I had not ever thought that I could write a poem. But he was very pleased with them and showed them to one of my colleagues who brought them back to me in a more proper form and said, "Look, you can do this." So I did, and then I had the good fortune very soon to spend a year in the University Extension in that year after Nelson Bentley retired, and so I spent 3/4 in his classes, just catching him close to the end of his life. Sorry, I don't want to talk this to death.
No, it's a wonderful story. It sounds like it was like waiting there for many years, and then it had the opportunity to come out.
Yeah.
Well, Catherine, I'm so delighted you found us, and I hope you'll, if you're a writer, you'll join us every second Thursday of the month, especially if we come back to meeting in person at the Ballard Library. Originally, the series was at the university branch, moved around for many years, and then was like in a cafe for a while, but has been safely housed and well tended at the Ballard branch of the Seattle Public Library for, a long time now. I forget how long time. And speaking of the Ballard branch, Anne Teplick, I'd love you to speak to the display there now.
Hi. So at the Ballard branch, there's a display of letterpress broadsides that contain poems from children at Children's Hospital. I've worked with Sierra Nelson for over 10 years at Children's Hospital through Writers in the School, Seattle Arts and Lectures. And our big project each year is to choose some poems to be magically transposed into letterpress broadsides, and they're beautiful. They will be at a number of libraries. I think the schedule, they're like a traveling show. So I hope you'll go to the library and see them. Yeah. I don't know what else to say. That will probably make me start crying. So
they're beautiful.
It's an amazing project. And I'm honored and humbled to be a part of it.
Yeah, it's just the words accompanied, just looking through them today. There's one like with a giant, words with a giant. Oh,
I know.
They're just stunning. So.
And I just want to, put a shout out to Partners in Print. They are the letterpress collaborative that we've worked with for 12 years, and they form a new collective within the last 2 or 3 years. But if you look up Partners in Print, you can on their website you can see many years of broadsides from children's, and they're beautiful. They're beautiful.
They are. I just simply are in so many ways.
Thanks for bringing that up.
Yes, and it sounds like if you go online, you don't have to actually travel to Ballard. So one quick question for the poetry group. How long have you all been together?
I joined after it had already been going for a number of years, so I don't know. And Janet were all there ahead of me.
I think I was the last person to join, and it must have been 3 years ago, perhaps.
You weren't the last person to join, because you were there. Oh, well, you were
there previously, and you took a break, and then you came back.
Oh, that's true. That's right.
The group was started by Vicki Ford, Neil Graham, and me about 30 years
Wow.
ago.
Wow. So
as
right up
far
there
as I
along the
remember.
time of,
And people have come and gone over the years.
mhm. Like it's about time. So,
Right.
Yeah,
I joined in 2007 and Ruth and well, eventually Marcia came back. She was moving or something when I came, and so I didn't meet her then. And then also Janet was there, and those are the only people left from the people who were there in 2007. And then Katie came, and then Francine came after I was there. And
excellent.
Vicki was there when I came to. Vicki couldn't come tonight, and I'm sorry about that because
Yeah. Okay.